Dianette, I am so excited to chat with you. Thank you so much for sitting down with me.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Okay, can you share a bit of your personal journey, like from Malibu mom to elite mountaineer, and how that transformation began?
It began when I got 10 of my friends together and we all decided to climb Mount Whitney. Most of us were Malibu housewives with young children, and most of us had never done anything like this. And we just went for it. And by the time I reached the summit, I was hooked. So that one climb started it all.
Wow. That's how it started. Okay, that's pretty fantastic. Okay, tell us about some of the interesting and intense challenges you've done throughout your life.
It's pretty varied. You know, a lot of times people will stick to a lane in adventure sports, and I've been so fortunate that my career has kind of run the gamut. But a few that really stood out for me is Race Across America, which is a bike race across the United States. That was pretty brutal. We finished in 6 days, 13 hours and 33 minutes.
Wow.
And I didn't want to see a bike from after that.
I bet.
Because I was so tired at one point, I fell asleep with my face in a pile of French fries.
Wow. I mean, that's a good place to land, though. Right in French fries.
Very salty.
Yes.
Another big kind of defining one was the Gobi March, which was a 155-mile ultra across the Gobi Desert. And I don't remember what day it was, maybe 3 or 4. My camelback broke in the middle of the sand dunes. And I was in the middle of nowhere. I was hallucinating. Someone fortunately came up behind me and kind of made me follow him, just keep my eyes on him. And, you know, he got me to the next checkpoint. But, you know, I thought I was in a snowstorm. I was hearing voices. It was pretty brutal. And then my feet exploded a day or two later because I was wearing these compression pants. And all the blood was running down my legs, but couldn't get back up because the pants were so tight. So I ended up finishing 150 miles of that race. And then my better judgment kicked in and I did not do the last 5, which was heartbreaking for me because not finishing is, you know, really eats at you. But fortunately, I did the right thing and didn't continue on.
Wow. Okay, you've been through a lot. And, you know, people listening are thinking, okay, this is obviously a very fit person. Have you always been into fitness and, you know, growing up and races and things like that? Or did it turn into that?
Not at all. I was a cheerleader all throughout high school, which, you know, back in those days, cheerleaders were not what they are now, which are these extreme athletes. But yeah, I was a cheerleader and that was my thing. When I first met my husband, he would try to get me to go on runs with him. And I didn't even own a pair of running shoes and I could barely run around the block. So it happened slowly, but, you know, being a mom, I would go to the gym and that's kind of when it took off.
Yeah, sure.
I'm not this avid gym person where I go all the time. I always tell people I'm probably the laziest endurance athlete, you know, because I believe in balance in life.
Sure. You got to have some of that. All right. What are some of the most intense or defining moments, would you say, from your most extreme challenges?
100%. My first Eco-Challenge, which was in Borneo. It was there that I realized and had some pretty big epiphanies about life. One of which is that I could survive anything. And I lost a lot of fear in that race as far as my home life. And I also realized that I really needed very little to survive and that anything other than shelter, food, and a friend just made me an incredibly blessed person. I no longer needed that, you know, big Malibu house and the fancy cars. And that is a very freeing place to be.
Yeah. When you can just let go. Absolutely. Yeah. You talk about everyone having their own like Mount Everest. What does that metaphor mean to you?
I mean, for me, it means like, what is the big issue you're dealing with on any given day? Like that problem of your day, that's your Everest, your big hill to climb. And then, you know, how do you go about tackling your mountain for the day?
I mean, that's a good way to look at it, because we all have that moment where and not letting it take our, if it was a bad moment of the day, not thinking it was a whole day. It's just a moment.
It can be a moment. I mean, it could be something like, what is that thing that keeps you up at night? It can be something that's maybe lasts a year. It could be, that day only. And it could be something that has been ongoing for a while, that is your personal Everest, in my view.
Sure. How can people identify with what their personal mountain is? How do we find that out and figure that out?
I think for most people, it's pretty obvious of what's that thing that's bothering you, whether it's a relationship or, a job or a goal. But, sometimes you can't pinpoint it. And then I think, well, what is it that keeps you up at night? What's the thing that if you wake up at 2:00 in the morning, the one thing that you're worried about?
What kind of pops into your head? What pops up? What keeps coming back? What keeps returning?
Exactly. And because until it's solved or it's handled correctly, it will keep returning.
Yeah, that's true. What advice would you have, for someone facing a daunting challenge who doesn't know how or where the world to begin with it?
Oh, that's a good one. For me, I write it down on paper. Or if I'm out on a hike, then I can think it through because I've got the time and stuff will come to me naturally. But otherwise, sit down, write your problem on a piece of paper. And then halfway down or at the very bottom of the sheet or the next sheet, depending on how big this problem is, write down where you want to be, how you want it resolved, or what the solution or goal is. And then just, free form, just write whatever comes to mind, or maybe there are specific steps you can do. But when you put it on paper and get it out of your head, I find that to be really helpful.
It's amazing what that can do. I would do that if I have big decisions to make. I always will write 2 sides to the list of the pros and the cons, and you think I can just do that in my head. No, it is so much more powerful when it's on paper and you can read it and it's not cluttered in your brain. I think that is really good advice. Get it on paper. Dianette, how did you begin to rewrite your own story?
When I realized that I don't have to answer to anyone anymore, I was divorced, and it took me years, probably 2 decades, to realize, no one else is running this race of life that's my personal race. I mean, we all start at a start line. We're all looking at each other like, okay, who do we answer to? Who's judging us? Why do we let that dictate how we live our lives? So once I really let that go and stopped caring about the judgment or what someone would think, it changed everything. And, as long as you're not hurting people, and, I do answer to my kids because I think we all do, but, just I stopped worrying about what others thought.
That's powerful in itself when you can get to that place, for sure. What did that process of reinvention look like after loss and major life transitions?
Well, that took a while. Grief moves at its own pace. And just when you think, oh, okay, I've got this under control, I can handle it, it shows up again. A picture can appear on your phone. And so that, just understanding and giving myself some grace that it might not, the grief might not stop at year 1. I mean, I found year 2 to be more difficult than year 1. So getting out of my front door or getting out of the car when I got to the grocery store for me would be a major win for the day. And, I started to just, appreciate those small wins. And yeah, you kind of move on from there.
Sure. And you mentioned grief. You faced unimaginable personal loss, including the death of your son Johnny. How did you find the strength to keep going, or would you have anything to say to someone maybe in a similar situation?
Um, there might be times you want to give in or give up. You cannot. That's not a choice. Um, I am very, very fortunate that I have other children as well. And when you realize I had to realize that their lives matter as much as my sons did. And if I checked out, what does that say to them? That they didn't matter? That only my one child mattered? So that really helped give me the strength to, you know, live for my daughters as well. And, but also it was always in the back of my mind is I'm going to see Johnny again someday. I fully believe that. And I want him to be proud of me and the life I lived. And that is important. I want to make all of my children proud.
Sure. Thank you for sharing that, Dianette. Thank you so much. I'm sure someone that may be in a similar situation can take something from that. Did you find strength in, your healing with adventure play? Did that help?
It's probably the main thing that saved me. I was having an incredibly difficult time, and I was out walking my dogs one day, and I literally did not feel connected to the earth, and it scared me. And I went home, and there was an upcoming ultra in Sri Lanka, and I contacted Mary Gaddams. It's a Racing the Planet Ultra Series, and it was very last minute. And I said, please, is there one spot left? And if there is, can I have it? And I found myself on a plane to Sri Lanka. I hadn't run. I didn't even know if I could run at that point. And I felt alive again. And, then all the shooting stars. And it's like, okay, This was meant to be. I was supposed to be here. And I write about some crazy things about that race and other signs from Johnny in the book. And yeah, that was the start of, bringing me back.
Dianette, if people aren't familiar with ultra, what is that?
An ultra, I think technically anything over a marathon distance.
Oh.
But with Racing the Planet, and I think with a lot of the big ones, it's anything over 100 miles.
Wow.
And Racing the Planet is always 155.
155. And are you, obviously this is over a longer period of time, but I mean, there's like nights, and maybe when you said you fell asleep in some French fries, do you sleep in between? Like, how do those work?
So every race is different. The French fry race was actually a bike race. The ultras are running races, and depending on the organization. So I mostly do Racing the Planet, and theirs is the first 4 days you do 25 miles. So there's no nights. And then on the 5th day, you do 50 miles. And the faster people obviously aren't out there at night. I, however, am out there at night in the dark. And and you get to the checkpoint for that day, and you go to sleep and get up and do it again.
Wow. And do you have, I'm just interested in, do you have your gear, or do they have checkpoints that has some, a place for you to sleep, or is it just what you bring, or how does that work?
So again, every race is different. With Racing the Planet, they provide a tent that you share with, multiple people, which is great because you meet people from all over the planet. Even if you don't speak the same language, you all pretty much have the same gear. And, some people's gear is much lighter and better than others. So you're always kind of looking, okay, what's the latest, greatest, and how can I improve by seeing how people do it better? So that's the other thing is every race I'm trying to do it better and make fewer mistakes. And the race, so they provide the tent at night and they provide water. So the rest of it, you carry everything on your back. 7 days of food, your clothes, your toothbrush, whatever. There's a mandatory gear list, which is very limited. But then, you decide what you feel you can and cannot live without for 7 days.
Wow. Okay. So Dina, I have so many questions, but like first that comes to my mind, I mean, you have to pack food for 7 days. What do you pack? What have you learned helps and maybe isn't too heavy while you're running or walking and carrying it?
Well, the problem with me is I really love to eat. So I'll do the mountain house meals. But when I get into the country, then I'll take it out of the packaging. And maybe for a day of, um, I'll take 3 meals and put them in plastic bags, but save one of the containers and reuse that over and over again. And I know that sounds very bacteria laden and disgusting, but you do what you have to do to keep the weight down.
Yeah.
One woman I've raced with numerous times, and she just brings those ramen noodles that weigh nothing and Fritos and then a few other things. And I wish I had her discipline because her pack weighs so much less than mine. But I don't know if I could do 7 days of ramen when, Mountain House and all these other companies have such great, food items. And sometimes you just want beef stroganoff when you get into camping.
Sometimes you do, and you deserve it at that point. You deserve to have that. Okay, obviously you are so passionate about this, Dianette. How can people learn to pursue their passions even when life like isn't going as planned or when those passions feel so impractical?
So to that I say impractical to whom? If it's your passion, and I don't care if it's reading comic books, it's your passion, which means it's worthwhile. And you cannot care about other people's opinions of what makes you happy. If it makes you happy and it's, not immoral or illegal, then it's worth your time to pursue. And whether it's something you can only do on a weekend or at 5 a.m. before you go to work, whatever it is, give it a few minutes of your time and, add more time to it and do it to where you can do it more and more and more. And, I just think it makes people happy when they're really acknowledging and doing the thing that makes them happy.
That's true. That's very true. I think we get in our own heads of like, oh, what is someone else going to think of this? Or what is this person going to think? That we base a lot of our decisions on what others' opinions are of us. And if we can just get out of that space, that's the power, right?
100%. And it's so powerful to you as a person to, once you stop caring about other people's opinions.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And you've turned a lot of pain into purpose. What does that mean for you?
I know so many parents who've lost kids, and I see so many different ways in which they've done just that. I mean, people have started foundations, or taken on specific charities that they pour themselves into. And I think that is so wonderful. But it can be anything. Again, do what makes you happy and do more of it. For me, it was, I started sponsoring a kid in Cambodia through Cambodian Children's Fund. And I have now had a relationship with this kid for almost 10 years. And, he was really little when I first started sponsoring him. Now he is towering above me, and I'm going to go to his high school graduation in another year or two. And so that for me, it took me out of my headspace and grief and, poured it into someone else and something else. And it really does help fill that void. And I would never have even met this kid or even heard about the Cambodian Children's Fund if Johnny hadn't passed. So I have to look at, something positive out of a horrible situation. Now this kid, this young man, has a completely different life because of a tragedy that happened here.
Wow. How can others turn their pain into purpose in their own lives?
I mean, I just suggest sign up for something, an ultra, a climb, something that's not going to happen tomorrow, but maybe a few months down the road, because then you have to train for it. And for me, every time I can get outside, and even if it's just walking at a slow pace, it just changes my mindset. and, the endorphins and all of that kick in. And all of a sudden that, sadness I was feeling or that hole I was in, I'm out of it. And then you have this event that, you get to go do. And especially if you've paid any money towards it. Once I pay money towards anything, I'm not back again. So
you're committed.
I'm committed.
That's a really good point. Dianette, your story is one of resilience and perseverance. What are the mindset shifts or practices that helped you keep moving forward, especially when the path felt impossible?
I had those days. Thankfully, I don't have them anymore, but I would call them Netflix days. And if I was really overwhelmed in sadness and I couldn't leave the house, I would just give myself some grace and say, well, okay, today's a Netflix day. Or if I could get myself to a movie theater and go see a movie, even if I, hadn't showered for a week and I would walk in my Ugg boots and my sweatpants. If you go in the middle of the day, usually no one's there.
True.
And I found thank goodness, I found when I walked out of the theater, I was in a completely different headspace, and I was happier, and I had gotten out of that spiral. And, it's these little things that maybe sound dumb or impractical, but it works. And at those moments, the little small gains, add up along the way.
Yeah, that's really good advice. The little small, I think that's like an important takeaway. Even if it's small, if you think it's just tiny, just go for a walk. Just, just something little can really add up to be a lot. Is there anything else that we didn't talk about that you want to mention or let people know?
No, get outside, enjoy the beauty of looking at trees or flowers, and, be good to yourself, be kind to yourself. Don't worry about others' judgment.
That's good. That's good. The science behind just getting out and taking a walk and your headspace, and just, even if you just do a quick 5-minute walk, is so powerful. So great
Especially
advice.
if you live in Utah. You people are so lucky there. It's the most beautiful state. There's no excuse not to go outside in Utah.
It's so true. It's absolutely true. I try to, once in a while, our station is downtown Salt Lake City, and it's just beautiful outside right now. So I try to take breaks here and there, and just, even if it's like a couple minutes, walk outside. So great advice. Thank you for sharing your story. You're so inspirational. Thank you for chatting with me, Dianette. And if we want to follow along and follow your story, where's the best place to go?
Instagram, which is Dianette Wells, or my website, dianettewells.com. And I hope you all buy the book, which is Another Step Up the Mountain, and get out there.
Another Step Off. When did that come out?
It came out last June, and and it's been a fun ride, promoting it and talking about it. And if it inspires one person to get up off the couch, then mission accomplished.
Dianette, what will people take away from your book? How can it change them?
I hope that people take away that, wow, this woman's life is worse than mine. And she's still, like those weebles wobbles and they don't fall down. She's still able to get back up. So, if people can take that away from it, then I feel that that's what they'll take away from it, is that they can survive and get through anything.
Yeah, they can do it. One more time, what is it called?
Another Step Up the Mountain.
Another Step Up the Mountain. Well, congratulations on, first of all, writing a book, because that can involve every challenge and ultra that you've done. It's so inspirational. You are amazing. Thank you for chatting with me today. It's great to talk with you. Thank you, Dianette.
You too.
And thank you for listening to another episode of Fresh Off the Set. Please rate, review, and subscribe, and we will see you next week. Congrats, you made it to the end. If you want to continue to freshen up your day, you can watch us on Fresh Living every weekday on CBS Channel 2 in Utah at 1 o'clock. You can also watch us on our YouTube channel, KUTV Fresh Living, and follow us on social media. We will see you next week.